When did strict parenting backfire? My dad was absolutely convinced that real men didn't belong in kitchens. I wasn't allowed to date anyone who couldn't throw a football and had to sit through dinners with boys who bragged about bench press records. Dad would quiz them at the door. What position do you play? How much can you lift? If they answered wrong, they never made it past the porch. Mom was worse, asking, what does your father do? Construction? Police officer? Good. I'm sure if you were a grown man in aprons, your father would be disappointed. I tried pushing back once. Mom, Gordon Ramsay owns like 50 restaurants. She snorted. He yells and curses. That's the only manly thing about him. I gave up arguing after that. The required culinary arts credit for graduation felt like a cruel joke. I begged my counselor for alternatives. Can I take shop instead? She shook her head. It's either culinary arts or summer school. I told my parents it was basic home economics and prayed they'd never check. That's where I met Warner. Dark curls always dusted with flour, burns on his forearms from the oven, constantly scribbling in a recipe journal. The first day, while others struggled slicing onions, he julienned vegetables like he was conducting a symphony. His knife never stopped moving, perfect uniform cuts appearing effortlessly. For a week, I just watched him work. He'd taste everything 3 times, adjusting seasonings with tiny pinches. Once he spent 20 minutes on a single sauce, adding drops of lemon until his eyes lit up. Perfect, he whispered, and my stomach flipped. The second week, he caught me staring. Your bechamel's burning, he said softly, appearing behind me. I jerked back to reality as smoke rose from my pan. Here, he took my whisk, fixing my mess while explaining the technique. His hand covered mine, guiding the motion. Feel that? Smooth circles, like you're writing cursive. The sauce transformed from lumps to silk. We started staying after class after that. He taught me mother sauces while everyone else rushed to sports practice. His eyes would light up explaining flavor profiles, how acid brightens richness. He'd leave me perfect croissants in my locker, still warm. We'd hit farmers markets where he'd teach me to smell melons for ripeness, feel tomatoes for the perfect give. One afternoon, making pasta from scratch, our hands tangled in the dough. Flour was all over my hair, his cheek. He reached to brush it from my face, fingers lingering. I named a dessert after you, he admitted. Eloise's Eclipse, dark chocolate with gold leaf. My heart hammered. Nobody had ever named anything after me. My parents would kill me if they knew about you, I whispered. He pulled back slightly. Because I'm Puerto Rican? I snorted. Because you cook. The word sounded ridiculous out loud. He laughed, but his eyes stayed sad. My dad thinks I should be an engineer. Says cooking's for people who can't do real math. He showed me his notebook. Recipes written like equations, ratios, and temperatures precisely calculated. I just solved different problems. We kept it secret for 2 months. I lived for our secret meetings, for the way he'd unconsciously hum while whisking, how he'd feed me spoonfuls asking, more lime, more salt. I was falling hard for a boy who treated food like art and treated me like I was worth memorizing every detail about. Then Thanksgiving week arrived, and everything fell apart. Mom got the flu Monday morning. By Tuesday, she could barely lift her head. 23 relatives were arriving Thursday, including her perfect sister who hosted magazine-worthy dinners. Mom tried getting up Wednesday, took one step, and collapsed. Cancel Thanksgiving, Dad said, panicking. Order Chinese food. Mom sobbed from bed. My sister will never let me forget this. I'll cook, Dad offered desperately. I actually laughed. You can't even boil water properly. I was of no help either though. Despite weeks with Warner, I'd never tackled anything close to Thanksgiving dinner. Dad started calling every restaurant in town, all booked. Even the grocery store pre-made dinners were sold out. Warner could help, I blurted. Dad froze. Who's Warner? He's from culinary class. He's really talented. He cooked for 50 people last year. A male chef? He said like a slur. Absolutely not. I pulled up Warner's Instagram, showing them his posts. Professional looking plates, a feast he'd catered for his church, the food truck he worked weekends. Mom weekly grabbed my phone, zooming in on a perfect turkey. He did that? Dad crossed his arms. What kind of man cooks like that? The kind who's getting a full scholarship to culinary school, I shot back. They exchanged desperate looks. Mom's sister would arrive in 18 hours. Fine, Dad muttered, but I'm supervising everything. Warner arrived at 5 a.m. Thursday, hauling professional equipment I didn't know he owned. He'd prepped all night, had stocks already made, bread dough rising, compound butter whipped. Dad stood guard, suspicious, until Warner started working. He broke down the turkey like a surgeon, explaining each cut, made gravy from scratch, building layers of flavor Dad didn't know existed. The kitchen filled with smells that made Mom crawl from bed just to watch. Where'd you learn this? Dad asked, mesmerized as Warner flambéed sweet potatoes. My grandmother, she ran a restaurant in San Juan. By noon, the dining room looked like a magazine spread. Turkey so moist it fell apart when touched. 7 side dishes, each one restaurant quality. Desserts that made my aunt demand recipes. My aunt was too busy stuffing her face to say anything good or bad about the food. Who catered this? My uncle asked. My daughter's boyfriend, Mom announced proudly from the couch. I choked on stuffing. Dad pulled Warner aside during dessert. You did good, son. He paused. Maybe you could teach me sometime? That gravy was. He actually looked emotional. Warner grinned. Sunday mornings, we'll start with eggs.